Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with a spoiler-free review for A Dragonbird in the Fern by Rueckert. So this is a standalone fantasy novel, which I know for a lot of people in itself is exciting, and you guys might remember that this was one of my most anticipated releases for the quarter / the entire year, and I am so happy to say that it absolutely lived up to that. This is going to be a very positive review, because I absolutely love this book. I thought it was fantastic. I will put the content warnings for this book in the description box if you would like to check those out, and yeah, like let's just get into me gushing about this book, because I really hope more people pick this one up. This is from an indie publisher or a smaller publisher, so it definitely is not going to get, I think, the marketing and like the promotion that other books will, but I really hope that people pick it up anyway, because again, I just think this was really stellar. So we are following our main character, Princess Giara, and really soon before the start of this book, her older sister Scylla was brutally murdered, and her family don't know what happened to her. Like they don't know who did it, they don't understand why this happened, and in this world, if somebody is murdered and their killer is not brought to justice, the murdered person becomes or can become an Earthwalker, which is basically their vengeful spirit is stuck on Earth, wandering and becoming more and more dangerous until their killer is finally caught, if that does happen. And that is what happened to Scylla. So Giara and her family are still really struggling with this loss and with the added grief of now this beloved person that they all love and is so important to them becoming unrecognizable, basically. So all of this is going on, and there was this king named Rafar of another kingdom who Scylla had been engaged to marry before her death, and then Giara ends up finding evidence to say that the person who killed Scylla is from this King Rafar's country, and that's why Giara agrees to marry King Rafar in her sister's place, because she figures if she can go to that new country, this kingdom, and be there, she'll be able to figure out what happened to Scylla and who killed her, and get justice for her, and also finally put her spirit to rest. So Giara agrees to this, and she does end up marrying Rafar, and she goes to his kingdom. And so from then on, we're seeing Giara try to adapt as best she can to this completely different culture. Giara is also dyslexic, and in this fantasy world there's no diagnosis for that, so she has just been forced to struggle her entire life, and also she's grown up thinking that she's not very smart or that she's not like good at things, when in reality that's not true. It's just that people, like, she doesn't have a word for the way that she like sees language or she sees words, and people won't listen to her when she tries to tell them what she needs. So it's heartbreaking to see her go through that, but it's also so satisfying and fulfilling to see Giara be so smart and so competent, and to really come into her own and become just a more confident person, because she's also like kind of like shy and awkward at the beginning, and so she quickly realizes that she's gonna have a hard time adjusting to being a queen of a kingdom where she doesn't even speak the language. But we see her work so hard at that and start to succeed, and I am not dyslexic myself, so I can't speak to how the representation is done, but at least from the way this book read, I feel like it did a really beautiful job of showing that Giara is up against something very difficult. It doesn't brush off her struggles as being unimportant, while also it shows that she is more than that. I just think that was really well balanced, and I loved Giara as a character. She is just so wonderful. Like I loved seeing her arc, I loved seeing her grow. She's so determined, and she doesn't think of herself as being like especially good at things, partly because she has grown up thinking she's not very bright, but we see that she is so compassionate and so smart, and just again like so determined, and I really loved following her. I also really loved Rafar and their relationship, like them getting to know each other, and I feel like a lot of times in stories like this where you have one character who is learning like the language who people can't really communicate very well, it can feel a little uncomfortable, like even a little icky if they start developing feelings for each other, because it doesn't feel like they've really had the opportunity to get to know each other. But I think this book did that so well. Like, I'm so impressed at the way that Rueckert could convey like who these people were. Like, they could talk to each other after a fashion, even though they did not, at the beginning, they did not speak the same language. So I thought that was beautifully done, and I realized there was something I meant to mention at the very beginning of this review, but I got carried away, so I didn't. But one thing I think is really cool about this book is I feel like this really perfectly balances the plot aspects and the character aspects. It is no secret that I am a character-focused reader, so obviously, like, I love that. So, naturally I'll be drawn more to the character stuff, but I think it's really cool because I think this book really, like I said, I think it really like balances those things. So if you are more of a plot person, I think you could still really enjoy this book because the story, like the plot elements were so interesting and so compelling, like this kind of mystery, and like the actual plot stuff that is happening is also really, really interesting. So I just think that's like another thing that makes this book really cool is I feel like it could be kind of widely recommendable. Like I just think that the development of the story and like the mystery and the world and everything, I think that was balanced really well with the development of the characters. And then as I was saying, I just really, really loved this cast of characters. Like Giara feels very isolated at the beginning, but we do see her start to like make some friends and allies, which I really loved. And something else I think is really cool about these characters is they feel very real and very genuine. I get kind of frustrated when people who don't like fantasy and or who look down on fantasy as a genre. I have heard this several times from people who it's like, well, I like to read about real people. Like as if character building in a fantasy world is automatically less convincing or less important than in a contemporary world. And I just find that very frustrating, and I feel like this book is a really excellent counterexample because Giara and this cast of characters, they feel, again, they feel so real and so genuine, and even though yes, this is a fantasy world, the people still feel very human and very relatable and just very well written and very interesting, and like again, they do feel real. Like you don't have to have a contemporary setting to have characters who feel genuine, and I feel like these characters definitely were. I also thought the world building was really excellent. Like the different like kingdoms that we see, like we definitely spend the most time in Rafar's kingdom because like that's where most of the story takes place, but the whole world feels very well thought out without being confusing. So I actually think maybe this could be a good fantasy book even for people who aren't as confident reading fantasy yet, because I feel like even though there are some like political things and like learning about alliances and stuff, overall the world doesn't feel like overly dense, but it still feels very like rich and very well thought through. And then also along with the world, the different cultures and beliefs I thought were really beautifully done in this book, and I really love the way that we see these different cultures and these different beliefs and religions and ideas. Like we see how there is sometimes some overlap, but in a way that still respects the different groups and the different beliefs as being distinct. Like for these different cultures and groups and beliefs, their differences and their similarities both felt respected. And then I also really loved the themes of this book. One theme that is definitely an important part of the story is grief, and I feel like in this book it's kind of operating on 3 levels. Like there's almost like 3 kinds of grief or 3 layers of grief going on, because our main character Giara and like her whole family, they have lost Scylla. So they have the grief of losing this person who they all love so deeply, but then they also have the added grief of not knowing what happened to her. So there's not like closure there, so that's like another kind of suffering. And then on top of that, they have the added grief of her being an Earthwalker, like of seeing this person that they love become unrecognizable and dangerous and vengeful and like possibly even hurting them and hurting their other loved ones. So I just think that was dealt with very thoughtfully, and just like the themes and ideas in general I think were really beautifully done. I'm actually going to read a couple of the blurbs because I feel like those do a really good job of communicating like the story elements of the book and how those are balanced, and also like the themes. So Sarah Glenn Marsh says, an intoxicating blend of fairy tale and ghost story, of romance and sisterhood. Don't miss this one. And then Dana Swift says, an enchanting and magical exploration of language, culture, and embracing one's shortcomings. You'll be rooting for this heroine from page 1. I also think like the mystery and the plot elements, like the story itself was incredibly compelling. Like I think I read this book in one day. Like I could not put it down, and I just loved everything about this book. Again, I really hope that more people pick it up. I also think something that's really impressive to me personally is there are elements of the story that could maybe have felt a little convenient based on other things that were happening or based on what was at stake, but I don't think it felt that way at all to me. Like I think that the way the book was written and like the way the story is set up, like I think it actually made a lot of sense, and I think that you can have certain things work out while still having really high stakes. Like this book definitely had really high stakes, so just because there were things that went a certain way, like I don't think that affected those high stakes, if that makes sense. So anyway, I obviously gave Dragonbird and the Fern 5 stars. Really love this. I hope more people pick it up. Please comment down below and let me know if you have read A Dragonbird and the Fern, what you thought of it, or if you're going to pick it up. I hope you do. If it sounds like something that at all interests you, I hope you give it a chance. And something I also should have mentioned, which I'm doing like an indie fantasy recommendations video, I don't know when that's going up, and I talk about it there too, but the reason I mentioned that this is an indie fantasy is not because like, oh, it's a good book considering it's independently published. The reason I mention it is because I think that can add an extra like impetus to like supporting the book or like promoting it or talking about it or recommending it. Like I know for me at least, if it's a book that I've been meaning to read or like buy or get from my library or whatever, if it's one that I'm really excited about and I hear it's really good and I'm excited to read, hearing that it's an indie book I think can kind of bump it up my priority list a little bit, because authors in general don't get a lot of support unless they're like one of the superstar authors, but that is especially true for indie published authors. So anyway, just wanted to kind of explain that. Like, I'm not drawing attention to the fact that this is indie because it's like a good fantasy considering it's indie, you know? Like, I mentioned it because I think it can kind of help prioritize those books maybe. But anyway, so thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!